Tyro here, and I'm taking a break from all of the games I intended to play as I binged Wanderstop instead and felt compelled to talk about it as it changed my outlook on life. Let me explain. First, it is still a cooking game, though I posit it's a therapy advertisement as much as that, so let's run through a speedy rubric. Speed read strats, let's go! As you can expect, spoiler alerts with another spoiler alert later for the biggest reveals. Wanderstop, let me cook. First, is brewing tea cooking? Is tea food? That probably hangs a lot of this score in the balance. I'm gonna say yes, because you boil water to cook pasta, and tea infused with fruit is food enough. So is there food? Yes. There is tea and coffee later, but that's pretty much it. Different flavors and ingredients, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't go in a mug, it doesn't happen in this game. So that's a C. Does it look and feel like a cooking game? Cozy, charming, absolutely endearing with a Dr. Seuss cottagecore flair with a few ounces of witchy goodness. A. Title of the game. Wanderstop is a pretty cute title, very charming and cozy, but not really a food mention. That's a C. Time to cook. You can pour out your first batch of tea in just a few minutes. The only bottleneck is waiting for the leaves to dry, so pet a bird in the meantime. A. Infusion is our second A in a row. Brewing is really all you do in the game, though I'm a bit mixed on that as a result. Farm to table, yet another A. We grow and gather our own ingredients the whole game, and it's very charming. Probably my one gripe is how optional it seems beyond what you're required to grow, as by the end game I had grown everything once, but never really needed all of it for tea, and had to brew half the options in the game as a last-minute spree for more of Alta's journey. Deglaze is yet another A. I don't know what it's called, but the big brewing machine in a tree is wonderful and fun to use, and it makes me feel like I'm Willy Wonka. I want 7. Tools of the trade, back down to a C. Outside of a mug collection to rival a college apartment that is also a gift shop, it's just you, 4 gardening tools, and some books. Knife skills. The minigame does a decent job of avoiding growing stale, but it's just the one minigame, and by the end of the game, the hardest thing they can throw at you is more steps to slow down the minigame. That's a B, but that's not a bad thing. Mired reaction is another A. Again, brewing tea is all you do. Nothing in this game of self-actualization progresses without a cup of tea. Presentation is an A. The Pluffins are adorable, cute, and playing tie-dye with their feathers with the tea before I dump the rest on the tree is a significant joy. I don't know how safe the glowing concoctions are to consume, but they are beautiful. We also don't get to taste the Pluffins, but the carnivore in me can't help but compare them to turkeys? Maybe someday. Health inspection is a C. I'm just saying we don't even strain the tea when we make it out of dirt, and whole plants, and pot shards. And then you get the dangers of a mob of businessmen tracking you down through every quiet, contemplative moment. Family friendly, that's a C. The forest and the dangers that lurk in it, from witches' curses to just kind of lingering swords of mentally broken warriors, it's not really a safe place. But kids, are you noticing all this plight? Digestif. It's a really fun and soothing game that I grappled a lot with in a tight 8 to 10 hours, but I wrestled with it so much that it caused me to spin off a second segment, so hold on, this rodeo isn't over after our rubric. But it's fun, it's cozy, it's engaging. Final score is 83%, a B overall, solid cooking game action, food neutral to radical but very cooking pure. So now that the lightning round is over, let's spill some tea and get into what I really wanted to say about this charming little cooking game. Huge spoiler warning ahead here for Wanderstop, as I want to talk about the big reveal. I'll give another warning right before, as it's a very hugely narrative-driven game and just released this month, actually a little over a week before I recorded this. So paraphrasing straight from the Steam page, Wanderstop is a narrative-centric cozy game about change and tea. Playing as a fallen fighter named Alta, you'll manage a tea shop within a magical forest and tend to the customers who pass through. But Alta does not want to be here, and if she gets her way, the tea shop will be nothing but a brief and painful memory. Brew tea, meet travelers, develop routine. Maybe doing nothing at all is okay. Stop running. So, as that blurb says, yes, we play as Alta, a fighter coming off a recent string of losses and ego bruising in search of a trainer to get her groove back, before she finds herself collapsing from exhaustion and unable to pick up her sword. But central to this story is how Alta and the others confront their personas, egos, and true selves. Alta would have died if not for Boro, the mysterious, seemingly self-appointed proprietor of the eponymous Wanderstop, who encourages Alta to rest, recover, and try making and drinking tea. Alta isn't forced to do anything and is seemingly trapped in the forest solely by her own sense of self. She is a fighter and she needs to run with her sword in order to leave. She projects that entrapment in the metaphysical space she finds herself. The Wanderstop itself is a mystical shop in a magical clearing where agriculture, mycology, and brewing coalesce around the appointed thematic beverage choice for introspection and wisdom: tea. Tea and coffee are the avenue for Alta's self-reflection and provide glimpses into her character and her past that she doesn't share with the other characters, even when they offer her space to do so. Each ingredient in certain special orders unlock voiced dialogues when you sit down for a mug yourself and drink in the stunning vistas or the cozy tea shop itself. As she reluctantly embraces life in the clearing, there is one transcendent theme that Alta's journey in the game embodies, in a very detachment and perfection agnostic way, to foil Alta herself. Whereas similar cozy games like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley offer low-stakes engagement with your neighbors in your town in efforts of building bonds and unlocking new things, even simple acts of cleaning up are a catharsis and source of satisfaction, sort of rock gardens in the cozy game genre. Helping out the visitors of Wanderstop is mandatory for plot progression, more in the vein of like Scribblenauts or Chibi Robo, albeit a paradoxical and almost nihilistic relationship. Your help does nothing to aid the visitors of Wanderstop beyond a cup of tea. At least Raymond wears the maid outfit you give him. Alta doesn't even understand when people want tea, and that if someone says they don't want tea, you don't make them drink the tea. What the hell, hero? Wanderstop swarms you with a sea of sagas and a plethora of quirky characters, all possessing unique experiences in the forest that run parallel and perpendicular to Alta herself, almost a Dante's Inferno style of character reflections. However, as Alta progresses through her journey in the forest, she's inversely linked to these characters, as she advances by their becoming decoupled from her and silent. And truthfully, she's kind of right to be disinterested. Nothing around her matters. The other characters struggle against and with their personas. The demon hunter is anything but. Gerald the Knight is succumbing to his curse. And while the game initially dangles a slim hope that maybe you'll see them again later, and that maybe there's a tea or you could like meet a witch that can cure curses and help people, we are repeatedly reminded that we are not in control. With each clearing change, the visitors of Wanderstop, the plants you've grown, the teas you've brewed, the pluffins you've painted like 40k miniatures, and even your tea mugs are quickly washed away as the clearing changes like leaves on a stream. Wait, no, that mug cost 599 nanobucks. Alta and the player are given the instruction to let go of the struggles around you and give up control. Let it come to pass and live in the moment. You're just a waymarker on the journey of others. You are neither entitled to their struggle's end nor an agent in their resolution. Just like real life. We're not here to spend time on Zen teachings, but I want to understand the enigmatic, jelly-filled cone that is Wanderstop. Control specifically is what Wanderstop wants you to believe is Alta's issue, or at the heart of it. But I disagree, that's not really what we're shown. Alta can accomplish no strict goals, with no deadlines, and no real rewards or consequences. While brewing the tea that your clients want as part of progressing the narrative, as the clearing and time advances on that scale, with Boro's consent, you are free to ignore the growing roots that can take over the clearing. They'll just blow away at the next shift. It attempts to impart this zen, doing nothing is okay, ethereal causation agnostic sense of the clearing. Wanderstop is not about Alta, the game says, just as it's not about those in the clearing. She has no control, and we have no control. I see another narrative that I'll spell out here, and maybe you'll agree or you'll disagree. Oro mentions that something within Alta wanting to move on is the catalyst for changing of the clearing, as Alta is one of the constants in the forest, like Boro himself, at least temporarily, and that puts Alta at the center of the universe in the forest, especially as we learn the root cause of her exhaustion and her main character traits. Spoilers. Alta found Master Winters and assaulted the old woman, then blocked out that memory from shame. It gets worse as you realize she attacked out of a combination of rage and frustration at the mentor she's been striving for turning her down. Or maybe another way of looking at it, no longer being of use to her. This seems to set the stage for an exploration of her psyche in a Jungian fashion, though it makes you wonder if we're really playing as Alta or just a fragment of herself. I don't know if it was intentional or accidental, but Alta as a character embodies something inherently selfish, a level of avarice that the game openly mocks via Nana and her stall, but seems to overlook in Alta herself. She views others only in terms of their value to her and grows bored of them once their value is extracted. Each and every character has a full plot and hints of more as they engage with their own personas and labels. Demon Hunter, Knight, Fighter, Businessman. Up until it becomes clear. No matter how many ropes are thrown, no one can pull Alta from her pit of despair. No magical panacea tea exists. On and on, characters like Ren and Zenith go through their own changes, and present opportunities for Alta to confront her reluctance for change, and learn a way forward. She rejects it. Ren is injured, similar to how Alta views herself, but she doesn't want to witness his grappling with a change in how he fights or why he fights. Comparatively, Zenith is going through their own character growth and change, moving from almighty cosmic being to mundane businessman. Alta can't watch anyone change, for better or worse, because she's not ready for change. Alta rejects all that in favor of her persona. Her mask is a champion fighter that can overcome anything, and she wrestles with her ideal self. But as we look closer, it's hard to tell who Alta that we play as is, what her self is. At first, it seems like her golden ideal self could be a reflection of her internalized fears of failure, perfectionism, and concentrated trauma. She briefly reflects on the rigidity of her thinking over one cup, in which it's hinted that she may have some form of neurodivergence, maybe OCD, or at least that she displayed enough traits that it was brought up by her mother. But that's not a revelation, it's a memory, and the game forces you to drink shockingly little tea, which contain a lot of these thoughts and glimpses. I posit we play as Alta's shadow, at least in some respect. Her rejection of her persona opened the clearing to the shadow within and the inevitable dissolution of that persona. Not necessarily within the story we see, but on Alta's path. Alta herself flies in the face of the game's themes, which largely follow a Zen style of conflict management, letting it roll off your back, acceptance, doing things for the sake of doing things, enjoyment of relaxation and doing nothing. We even have the tea shop representing an antithesis of capitalist and labor value-driven perspectives, possibly residing in the collective and cultural unconscious, and allowing the chance for Alta to engage with her true self. Oro mentions the forest makes different parts of the self easier to see, giving the shadow Alta we play as the opportunity to grapple with her persona, her ego ideal as champion fighter, personified by a shining golden version of herself. Alta's struggles and journey happen with her in the back seat, and her journey is happening without her being an agent or in charge of her own development as a character. This makes more sense and reaffirms to me that we don't play as Alta's self, but her shadow, the invisible part of the ego behind the ideal and the persona. More evidence for this comes in that golden version being the main one with a speaking voice outside of the clearing. We play as a nagging doubt in her mind that she is right or justified. The hardest part of this narrative is that Boro tells Alta she's close to leaving before she has even begun to accept that this other version of herself is herself. And it gets even harder to bear as the best advice Boro gives Alta, and Alta gives Monster, is ask that conflicting voice that brings you pain for permission to be okay, slow down, and rest. That pretty much acknowledges it has the power and control, and is the one that grants reprieve. This isn't advice you give a whole person, but a part, a conscience, a shadow. Alta deals with stress, the kind many of us who grapple with our own mental health or maybe neurodivergent have to contend with. Stress that disables her and causes her to lash out, consequences of which aren't really explored. This isn't a healing journey, it's one of becoming aware. The faintest embers glow within her, kindled by cup after cup of tea. Pulling out of the analysis and allegory, I do want to address the serious side of this game as myself, the player. Wanderstop came on my radar as I've been going through my own journey with mental health, and I found myself almost yelling at my monitor at many points. Many people I know have lost livelihoods in battles over far less severe actions they took. Yes, the fact that the only way Alta is able to get the help she needs is by collapsing in the forest is a heartbreaking fact that mirrors the state of emergency mental health care in our world, but it's more than a lot of us get. Those people want to help her. Listen to her as she listens to them. Stop charging so boldly forward, damn it! But even if we do get help that works, Alta and tea meditation aren't the coziest bedfellows, as she scarcely shows a single true feeling to anyone. If we can get the help we can afford, Alta seemingly loses no time, nor has any costs. If that help comes at a time we can accept it, as we see with Monster and Alta, that ego ideal, that voice keeping Monster in check and putting her down, isn't strong enough to force her to do anything when she's young. Most of us don't get the opportunity to even introspect as she does, with magical fruits that cause psychotropic effects. Much less with no pressure, no deadline, no dangers. This isn't an endorsement of mind-altering fruits. Seriously, don't do drugs to avoid treating your mental health. But watching Alta navigate her battle of the mind made me angry, until I realized that anger was my own inner voice. Instead of lashing me, it was lashing others. Controlling. I cast these stones from my glass house. I often don't ask for help, or admit that I need it. I struggle to rely on others as someone who can lash out at those I love sometimes. I'm not better than Alta. I don't think she's selfish. I see myself in her, and I think that I'm selfish. It's easier to demonize our failings than to admit she's another victim of a system that demands value, praises perfection, and wasn't built for the variety of people out there. We all deserve grace and opportunity for artistry and zen that Boro and Alta cultivate in the clearing. We all deserve to choose our own outcomes. Alta isn't really selfish. I'm projecting my own fears onto her. By the end of the game, she's ready to leave the clearing, sword in hand. But we are neither entitled to her struggle's end, nor an agent in the resolution, just like real life. Wanderstop is a wonderful cozy game that brushes up against great hardships and leaves the ending a mystery. I hope Alta and the other Wanderers succeeded because I want to succeed. That they can move on. That Monster gets to grow up to be someone new. I want to genuinely say to anyone watching, be kind to each other and yourself. Have grace. Fantasy is not reality, but we can breathe that magic into the world around us. You never know what journey your fellow person is undertaking. Maybe they could use a cup of tea. Maybe they don't want a cup of tea. I'm having a nice cup after this recording. If you're a fan of cozy games but don't have the patience for seasonal farming sims or daily logins, or you want a story you can sink your teeth into, check out Wanderstop. Also, the soundtrack is heaven. In closing, Wanderstop reaffirmed a lot of things I was scared to acknowledge in myself. Still am scared to acknowledge, but that I found a bit more courage to face while processing this story. I could spend more time on Boro's role in this odd metaverse, guiding folks in their reflections, or about how I suspect that Wanderstop itself is the healing spring Ren alluded to. I mean, come on, we have infinite water that causes magical effects on Pluffins and people alike. Maybe Boro is a patron deity for travelers, watching over them and lighting the shrine when it's time to shift their perspective. But for me, it's time to let Wanderstop go. I might come back someday, but it did what I needed it to do. That's it for this installment of Let Me Cook, and remember, if you're going through hell, keep going. Till the next time I have way too many thoughts about a video game. Bye-bye!